All right, should Nick Caserio trade for Patrick Queen? That's the question we're going to start with. The immediate speculation began yesterday when Patrick Queen did what many athletes often do. Used to roll your eyes at this type of thing, but these days when the social media gets tweaked and your current team gets wiped away, it deserves attention. And it got the attention of Derek Stingley. Derek Stingley replied with the eyeball emoji, and immediately the speculation, the dialogue began. Should Nick Caserio make a splash and trade for Patrick Queen? It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm your host, Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2, Sports Radio 610. Subscribe, like. This is your number one source for Texans digital content, and Sports Radio 610 is the home of the Texans and the place where we get you the best coverage possible of a team that's becoming more and more popular. As far as the Patrick Queen thing goes, I would absolutely consider it if I were Nick Caserio. The question immediately, and Mike asked the question, what would it take to get Queen? That's a good question. They just traded, they being Baltimore, they just traded for Roquan Smith, and they gave up a second rounder. Now, that impacts a potential trade for Patrick Queen with the Texans in a number of ways, because first, you got to think you can't invest too much money at the linebacker position when you're giving someone $20 million that you just traded a second-round pick for. So that's number one. Eventually, they're probably going to have to make a tough decision on Patrick Queen. That would come after this season. Do you want to do that? You might have to pay Lamar Jackson. You're probably going to have to go find a wide receiver. So are you getting ahead of things by not heavily investing in the position? Second of all, what is the value? If Roquan Smith is worth a second, what is Patrick Queen worth? He's been in the league 3 years. He's only 23 years old. He's never missed a game. He can get after the quarterback when asked. He can make plays on the ball. He can go sideline to sideline. He can do a lot. And with the Texans having DeMeco Ryans as their head coach, a guy who is a former all-pro linebacker himself, a guy who did really good work with Greenlaw and Warner in San Francisco, and a guy who really doesn't have much to work with here with the Texans outside of maybe Christian Harris. You got to think eventually they're going to want to improve at linebacker, and Patrick Queen would be a good way to start that out. Now, immediately, and Maverick Best Stop brings this up. Keep the comments coming. This is interaction, and that's something we take pride in here in the Locker Room. I say we, it's me. Although I might have a guest hop on in 30 minutes. Cody Stutz, my buddy, who also has a channel. I recommend subscribing. Spread the love in the Texans digital world because we're all in this together. Brandon Cooks wants out. The Ravens need a receiver. Now, could we get a scenario where maybe a switch makes sense? I would think the Texans would have to eat some of the salary, some of Brandon Cooks' salary, which I would be willing to do, especially if it brings Queen here. And then you address receiver in the draft, and you try to figure that out if you're Nick Caserio and company. So what would the price be? Do you have to give up number 33 overall? I just don't think so. And if you did, I don't know that the Texans would want to do that. That's too much of a prime selection. You have a lot of extra draft picks. You have extra threes. You have extra draft picks really from 3 to 7. So could you trade Brandon Cooks? Could you eat some of the salary? And could you maybe send a couple thirds or a third and a fourth or something like that? If that was the price, why not? Now, the scheme fit question will come up. How do you use Patrick Queen? Is Patrick Queen a good mix with Christian Harris? I think he is. And I think it would make sense. I think it would be great. The fact that the Texans are going to have all these rookies, you could pay Patrick Queen, give him an extension or whatever you wanted to, and I am okay with that. Are you down with it? Put it in the comments. We'll get into that. I don't think it's going to be a straight up type of thing. I think you would probably have to eat the salary. Other news with the Texans, we're 10 days away, or 10 weeks, 10 days. Damn, I wouldn't even be able to stand up if we were 10 days away. We're 10 weeks away from the NFL draft. speculation already beginning about the quarterback. Are the Texans going to take a quarterback? Are they not going to take a quarterback? Common sense would tell you probably they're going to take a quarterback. Which one is the question? It seems like all the people who actually watch tape for a living and study this stuff, they love Bryce Young. Todd McShay has said he's that dude. Dan Orlovsky has said he's Steph Curry. Mel Kiper's had good things to say, although Mel Kiper also likes Will Levis. But the guy, Reed from ESPN, Jordan Reed, he loves him. Mina Kimes loves him. It's really been hard to find experts that dislike Bryce Young despite the height. I'm one of those people who's really big on Bryce Young. I don't pretend to be a film guy. I'm not a film guy, but I'm a Bryce Young guy. Now, do I think Bryce Young will be there? That's to be determined. Although something kind of blew my mind that I'll get to in a second. And it was right there in front of me. And I can't believe I didn't think of this, but a piece that I read today it kind of blew my mind. And it's really kind of, it shouldn't have been as surprising to me as it was. It was right there in front of us. And I think it's some good news for you guys who want Bryce Young and want the Texans to get at least the quarterback of their choice. Joe Blue says 33 is too high for Queen. I agree, especially given that a second was for Roquan. I agree with that. So I'm there. Lewis brings up him deleting Baltimore from his social media. Yes, it's funny, isn't it, guys? Because it used to be like petty stuff like that. You roll your eyes. Oh, he deleted that on social media. Who cares? Today's NFL, that's as big as anything. I mean, that's the way high school kids are like sending messages to their significant others. That's the way of the world now. And it's just kind of the adjustment. Joe says a fourth is good enough. If you can get Patrick Queen for a fourth, then yes, that would be a no-brainer, to say the very least. So there was a report, friend of the show, DJ Bieneme, had on ESPN. He had the report that I guess candidates that interviewed for the Texans job said that the Texans are going to draft a quarterback at 2. I find it, this is kind of semantic. Lopez was a little bit more critical of it because Lopez is kind of the OG. But I find it hard to believe that Nick Caserio would just flat out say, we're taking a quarterback at 2 in interviews. Now, I'll look at it from my perspective. I've been in job interviews, or I've been in meetings with people where you can leave the job interview, and I would assume that one of the first questions that would come up would be, and this doesn't make the report true or false. I just find it hard to believe that Nick Caserio is just going to flat out say to everyone, hey, I'm drafting a quarterback at 2. I think the first question would be, what quarterback do you like? And I think you can take context clues and figure stuff out. Like if I go to a job interview or you go to a job interview, and let's say you're talking to them, and every question that you get from the job interview is about digital and how's your digital game. And, we really want to, know how you work digitally. And, the world is shifting digitally. They might not, the person interviewing you doesn't just come out and say, we're going to shift to more of a digital format, but I could leave that. And when I talk to my friends or someone calls me and asks me about the interview, I could say, well, yeah, they said that they're shifting to digital, although it's not a direct quote. So it could be like something like that, which is pretty semantic. I've also been in meetings with front office people where they tell me a lot of stuff and they basically say, and well, this guy's getting fired. And I've left and I've told people, yeah, this guy's getting fired after this season. They told me, although it's not a direct quote. So, I mean, I think you can use the process of elimination. I think the job interviews would be centered around, quarterback questioning, but I just find it hard to believe that Nick Caserio would just flat out say, we're taking a quarterback. And I think they would be ready to adjust, they being the Houston Texans. Now, Lopez was a little bit more critical of it, and you can download the Odyssey app and check out what he said specifically. But Lopez was a little bit critical because he said it didn't come across as and I'll get to your comments here, but Lopez said it didn't come across as a confident report. And that's Lopez being the award-winning journalist, published author, Hall of Fame caliber journalist. I think A&M's having like a ceremony for him next week. He thinks if you really are confident in your report, and this could be an editor thing or whatever, the sentence, general managers are people who interviewed for the job say that the Texans are taking say that the Texans are telling them they're taking a quarterback at 2. It shouldn't be in the 9th paragraph. You get what I'm saying? Like even people who didn't study journalism, and Lopez has a journalism degree. I have a journalism degree, and B. Scott had a journalism degree. And go back to the 11 a.m. segment, because B. Scott and Lopez had a really good conversation on this. Strong recommendation. Nothing but love for Brandon Scott. He's the best. But you don't bury the lead unless you just don't want it to be there. Like, why would, if we're just confident that Nick Caserio is saying we're taking a quarterback, why would that be the 9th paragraph? How many of you even read 9 paragraphs? I'm not saying that as insulting. Like, even me, like in a story, you got to get attention these days, man. A lot of times the headline will give it away, but the 9th paragraph, come on. So it's pretty semantic. I just don't really, I mean, I think it can be true without them just completely saying, we're going to take a quarterback. But Lopez went all journalism professor. You can go listen to that on the Odyssey app. The other thing, and I am marking your questions, comments, so we'll keep this going. The whole point of this is interaction. It's the locker room. Like and subscribe to. Helps the algae. As Texans Cap would say, it helps the algorithm. So let's keep that going. We're about 6 months in now, making some momentum. The draft's going to be fun. Going to start getting some prizes and stuff for all the supporters, and we'll keep that going. But this is something like I kind of saw the light today. And I'm really, really mad at myself for not seeing this sooner. And I'm kind of ticked off that it took an ESPN story for me to see this light. We talk about trading up. We talk about people trading over the Texans. And a while ago, I said this, and I didn't really realize that I was basically saying two things, because I did a whole video, and you can go back and look at the video. Juan says, how many of y'all can even read? That's just mean, Juan. But Jose says he's addicted to the locker room. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much, man. You could be addicted to worse things. But I was talking about how the price for the number 2 pick might not be much different than the price of the number 1 pick. Because if someone doesn't like let's say Indianapolis trades up and they want to draft Bryce Young. If the team if a team, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's Carolina, whether it's someone else, if a team doesn't like Bryce Young and doesn't have them as their top guy, then you can make a case that the Texans could actually get as much from someone trading up from 9 to 2 as the Bears get for Indianapolis trading from 4 to 2. Because in the Bears world, the Bears probably want they want to at least have Jalen Carter or Will Anderson there. So if the Bears, under that mindset, let's say that the Bears, their goal is to maximize equity and they want to get as many draft picks as possible. Now, if they want to, if the Bears want to stay in the top 4 and get either Anderson or Carter, then that's a completely different topic. But if their goal is to get max value and they're willing to listen to Carolina, or they're willing to listen to Atlanta, are they willing to listen to, let's say Las Vegas doesn't get Aaron Rodgers? If they're willing to listen, then it makes sense for the Bears to trade with the Texans first. Because think about it. The Bears right now, they're trying to get as many picks as possible. So if you trade back with the Texans, and let's say they know that Indianapolis likes C.J. Stroud, or they know that Carolina or Atlanta like C.J. Stroud, or they like Will Levis, then there's really no harm in trading back to the Texans for a few picks. And the proposed trade on this, I saw it from Matt Miller. I want to credit Matt Miller. The proposed trade wasn't a ton. It was number 2 overall, a 3rd rounder, a 4th rounder, and a 2024 3rd rounder. And some people would say, well, why would you take that when you could get multiple firsts? You can still get multiple firsts because Indianapolis might have liked C.J. Stroud, so they want to still trade up to 2. Atlanta and Carolina, if you're really trying to max value, they're in the same division. They were both willing to trade for Deshaun Watson. So if your goal was to trade with them first, if you were going to trade with Atlanta and Carolina and you know that they don't like the same quarterback the Texans like, then you get that 2/3, those 2/3 and a 4th, and you trade back to 2, and then you're getting even more because you're really not going to lower the value. So I was saying this last week, and I did not even realize that the Texans are actually in a pretty good spot depending on what Chicago does. And if Chicago's goal is to just maximize assets, then it would make sense for them to trade with the Texans first, because you're getting that icing no matter what. So that's pretty legit. That's really, really legit. TYBINC says he said this first. I'll give you credit for it. Whoever said it, it makes a ton of sense. It makes a ton of sense. Terry says, stay put, giving up picks is nuts. Not if you think Bryce is the truth. If you think Bryce is the truth and you just have to give up a couple 3rds and a 4th for Bryce, it's not nuts at all. And teams have traded more. And that's actually the identical trade that the Bears made for Trubisky. So I don't think it's nuts if he's the guy, and I think it makes sense. Is he asking, do you think the Texans jump to number 1 overall? I think it's possible. If it does, the price is right there, 2 3s and a 4, because Chicago can still trade. That's the thing. We've been looking at this as, oh, well, Chicago doesn't want to take that from the Texans because they can get this from Indianapolis. They can still get that from Indianapolis and trade with the Texans. They can just take advantage of the AFC South. They're in a fun spot right now. Eastside Herald says it would have been nice to have Eric Bieniemy as OC to coach Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I would rather have Bobby Slowick and Gerard Johnson than Eric Bieniemy. That's me. And if you watch the mic'd up, the NFL films, Patrick Mahomes is communicating with Matt Nagy most of the time. And I'm not making this up. You can go check it out. He ran to find him first to give him a hug. They're talking about formations after. I know Gerard. I know what Gerard's about. I know he has a good history with quarterbacks. Bieniemy's actually a running back coach. Not saying that's neither here nor there. But I like the offensive staff they got to work with a quarterback better than that option. And I think a lot of the league would probably agree with that if you watch. LD Reed says Bryce is the guy. We cannot let him past us. Bryce or bust. I'm with you. Seems like a lot of people are with you. FJ says Jahmyr Gibbs will not be available in the 2nd round. I'm kind of leaning with you too. I think running backs are going to be valued here. And I think people are the name that you always hear is Alvin Kamara. And I could see Gibbs not being available. Although if he is, that's great. I get a kick out of the running back dialogue because I just think it's so dated. And I think you're sometimes when people are saying this stuff, like it's the reason that running backs are found later in drafts, and you have these examples, and there's really not a lot. Like the top 8 leading running backs in the NFL last year, Their ADP, average draft position, was 29th in the draft. You had 5 second-round picks, 3 first-round picks. San Francisco traded half a draft for Christian McCaffrey. Even the Jamal Williams example, they had Swift, who was a second-round pick. Aaron Jones, he's great. Okay, they still drafted A.J. Dillon in the second round. So people have undervalued running back so much that you can get value. And also, running back can't play every snap. So there's going to be more opportunities and the guys get hurt. But if you don't want to pay running backs, why not use premium picks on them? I'm with you. I think Gibbs could go at the end of the first round. I could easily see that. BCB, Brown Chubby Bear. I wouldn't give up anything more than a third for Queen. You could draft a real Mike at 33. I don't know what they're going to do at 33. The possibilities at 33 are really kind of endless. So they could do a hell of a lot of things. Chris says we don't need to draft a running back in the first 2 rounds. That's insane. Again, the ADP of the top 8 rushers in the league was 29th. Not drafting a running back in the first 2 rounds, that's a really dated philosophy. You might as well go back to the 90s. We've talked about Kyle Shanahan. You need to go watch Mike Shanahan because that's that Orlando Scary, Terrell Davis BS. You've got to get backs. You've got to figure it out. And I think the Texans are going to take the running back position serious. FJ, if you end up with Will Anderson, Jackson Smith, Ajigba, and Jahmyr Gibbs, that's 3 Pro Bowlers out the gate. That's pretty bold, although I do like those guys. If drafting young meant we got more Mina Kimes, that's good enough reason to do it. Sean Kane, I don't know what that means. Can mean a lot of things, although I do think she's awesome. Alex says Young is becoming the consensus number 1 with each passing day. Not a single credible draft person has anyone other than Young as a QB1 except for Kuiper. How can the Texans not let another team jump them? Preach. TJ, I'm not letting the draft stress me out at 1-2. I like Young, Stroud, Anderson, and Carter, but we have no clue what the front office thinks of them. I'm just enjoying the process. I'm enjoying it too, although I do wish that they had control of the draft. Can't believe Isaiah Pacheco was drafted in the 7th. It happens, man. It happens. You find guys. You can. You get as many running backs as possible, and you try to figure it out because they're immediately in their prime. They're ready to contribute. I think Michael Dugar said this best. Let me see if I can get I think this is Dugar of The Athletic here. No.
In there, and I'm a former line.
That's DeMeco.
When you draft them,
here you go. This is Michael Dugar of The Athletic.
They're in their prime. The minute Roger Goodell says, with the whatever pick, Alvin Kamara, boom, prime. He's prime, peak physical state. He's the best value he'll ever be to the team in terms of finances. Right there, boom. No other position is like that.
Exactly. And I'm with Dugar. He has like a whole running backs matter movement that I thought was funny. Chris Brown says, hey, Landry, what if Young is gone? Would you like Richardson after we trade back and get more picks for someone to move up? See, I'm not as big on Richardson. I think that the whole dialogue about Richardson, I feel like it's like an overreaction to Josh Allen, where people are starting to act like accuracy can be taught. And I don't think it's that easy. 53% career completion percentage scares me a hell of a lot more than 5'10", if that makes sense. I know there's a lot of talent. I know there's a lot of raw athleticism. I know the highlights are incredible. I know he was the best player in college football after 1 week last year, but drafting Anthony Richardson, especially at 2, terrifies me. At 12, I mean, maybe I could see it, but when we start talking about 53% accuracy, completion percentage over a 2-year period, it just kind of scares me. Gridiron Takeover, who do you think the Texans will hire for run game coordinator since Clint got hired by the 49ers? I'm not sure, but I am happy for Clint. He's basically got the prime job that you can have in football as an assistant coach, the number 1 assistant to Kyle Shanahan. So I'm happy for him. I don't know who they'll go with run game coordinator. They'll figure that out. POS, Jack Easterby, what's the knock on JSN that he's banged up? Everyone he has played with and watched his film says he's the dude. Easy pick for me at 12 if he's there. I like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I liked him when he was in high school. Can't believe he got out of the state and went to Ohio State. He's been nothing but a baller. some of the best receivers, young receivers in the game, say that he was better than them. And this year he was cautious. I think Brown Chubby Bear and me had this conversation. He's talking about like injury concerns with Jackson Smith and Jigba. He made a business decision. Okay. And I don't blame him for that. Like, he made a business decision. He got nicked up a little bit. He knew he was going to the draft. So he set out. It's the same thing Nick Bosa did. Nick Bosa did the same thing. Nick Bosa elected at Ohio State to start getting ready for the combine. It happens. It happens. Like sometimes guys miss their final years. Now I know it's different because it was the COVID year. Jamar Chase didn't play his senior year. Micah Parsons didn't play his senior year. I guess it was their junior years. So it happens. But I don't think there's like some sort of like injury concern with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm a big fan of him. James says the QBs in this draft are overrated, and these guys would be second or third round picks in most years' drafts. I disagree with that very much so. I think you could say that last year, and they ended up being, all of them except Kenny Pickett ended up being. I don't think that's the case with Bryce Young. I don't think that's the case with C.J. Stroud. I do think people are trying to make a lot of Will Levis and make a lot of Anthony Richardson. I don't want to say it's as much as it was last year with Malik Willis and Ritter and whatnot, but maybe there are a couple of guys, but I think Bryce Young's a first-round pick in any draft. Any draft. POS Jack Easterby still going with the fixed asset thing. Good Lord. That is a listener of Sports Radio 610 and a locker room guy. Max says drafting a potential number 2 QB in the draft and a top position at the 12 slot, that is better than the number 1 spot. It depends what you think the number 2 QB is. If you're talking about like the number 2 QB on your board, sometimes there's a big gap. I mean, if you're drafting after, and I know that we look at this and we say, well, there's no generational QB. There might not be. They might not think that, though. They might think that there's a franchise guy. They might fall in love with somebody. And there's a decent chance that one of these guys is a franchise quarterback. So, I mean, it's kind of hard, to think that there's no drop off from 1 to 2, or you could all be the same, especially at the quarterback position. Jose asking about Caleb Williams. Am I the only one that's willing to wait for Caleb Williams? No, you're not. There are a lot of those people that are Caleb Williams fans. Lots of them. So no, you are not alone. Brown Chubby Bear, after the combine, I think Young stock drops and all these trade theories go to the wayside. Bears and Texans will stay put. Why? Because he stands on a scale? Like, are we going to have a freaking UFC like spectacle where Bryce Young walks out there and flexes in his like undies and stands on the scale? And if it's not 210, then we're going to freak out and say he sucks all of a sudden. Like, how's this we know he's going to be short. It's the same crap they did with Kyler Murray. You remember this crap with Kyler Murray? Oh, he's tiny. And all of a sudden he comes. He's just as tiny as they thought, and he was still number 1. You got to stop that. Shout out to J.O. I'm intrigued by Anthony Richardson. We're going to get Cody Stutz in here in a sec. I'm intrigued by Anthony Richardson with the Shanahan offense that Bobby Slowick will bring. AR had the number 1 PFF grade off play action last season. Okay. I can get down with that. Now he's got to complete his that 53% completion percentage is fine. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what they think of AR-15. KC007. If it was me, I'm taking Bijan at 12, then wide out, center, and tight end. The most important position needs in defense. Can't take all 11 picks anyways. Facts. And I do think that in free agency, we'll probably be able to trim that list and have a better grasp of it. So we'll see what happens. The one thing I do want to say about these quarterbacks, because, when you talk about them, it's a polarizing position, and it's also a position where people have the strongest opinions. But I will say that these guys are pretty damn good young men, man. Like, and I feel like I can call 21-year-olds young men at this point, being in the the mid to late 30s. I have no issue doing that. And they do all seem like they're, they got the makeup to be faces of franchise. So I just want to give them some props on that. H-Town Creole says, bro, you must have not seen how Jalen Hurts came throwing the ball. AR-15 is the best prospect in the draft, and no receivers in the draft is a first-round pick. I'm not disagreeing with him being a first-round pick. I'm just talking about him like in the same category as the other quarterbacks. And you say Jalen Hurts, I didn't see him throwing the ball. I watched him play all the way through high school to college. His completion percentages, I just pulled him up. 62.8%, 64.4%, 72.9%, and 69.7%. Now we're going to go to, AR-15 didn't have receivers. We're talking 53%, man. Case McCoy never had 53% completion percentage. I think his worst was 57. Case McCoy. I mean, let's not just browse over that. Now, if we want to browse over that, I would argue that that's more of a concern than some height, the makeup. Because when we're going to talk about like traits that someone doesn't have, like we are with Bryce Young, why don't we talk about how he cancels them out? He cancels them out because he's like one of the smartest quarterbacks. He likes to get rid of it. He knows how to extend plays. He keeps his head up. He's pretty accurate. Alabama was not Alabama this year. Jordan Reed was talking about that too. I just don't, have we seen the Josh Allen example? We have. But the AR-15 thing, just don't know, man. Let's bring on Cody Stutes. Stutes, what's up, dude?
What up, my friend? I love your Bryce Young. Like you and I have been some of the biggest Bryce Young guys. I got a little excited when Todd McShay on the First Draft podcast this week was talking about Young and how over the moon he is for him. And this one that stood out to me, the comment that stood out to me the most was, he's mini Mahomes. If he was taller, he has the same sort of poise and stuff like that you want from Mahomes. And you got to think about what Mahomes was when he got to the league and some of the things that he had to get better at and some of the things that he had to grow in that year that he sat. If Young's bringing something like that to the table from day one, and how are you not drafting this guy? How are you not drafting this guy? It'd be silly.
Man, you came in right with this AR-15 thing. Where would you draft AR-15? Where are you taking Anthony Richardson?
I would spend a second round pick on him easy if I was a team that look. This is the type of quarterback class where two guys get pushed up the board because this is the way the NFL works now. Will Levis, Kenny Pickett should have been a first rounder. Will Levis shouldn't be in the top 15, and Anthony Richardson shouldn't be in the top 20. But the way quarterbacks work now, the way teams desire quarterbacks, those guys find themselves pushed way up the board. I mean, we could see Anthony Richardson go in the top 10. That's not a top 10 talent. Like you could project him to a top 10 talent, but once go watch some of these Florida games where he's missing halfback screens. He's missing, like you cited the completion percentage. It's not like he had to throw deep every game, and he has a bunch of Hail Marys that didn't come down or a bunch of bombs that didn't come down. Like this guy's missing easy throws. Like I understand the talent. I understand like the best case scenario. His best case scenario is the least likely of the best case scenarios for the top quarterbacks.
What about the running back thing? Where you at on the running backs? That's polarizing. The dated ass philosophy of, hey, you don't take a running back in the first two rounds and stuff. I don't understand that. I like Dameon Pierce, but this notion that Dameon Pierce is, you don't need to worry about running back because of Pierce. He wore down last year. Like the work we were talking about having too much of a workload, not enough to too much of a workload. We were talking about that, and it eventually happened. You gave him like 109 less carries, 119 less carries in 13 games, and he had all 4 years. He needs another running back. They need other running backs And I know I'm not trying to insult him, but James Robinson had a similar season his rookie year, and the Jags still drafted Travis Etienne. You need these running backs. You need to use them in multiple ways. And with the receiving thing being as thin as it is, you're going to have to give up Cooks. You're going to have to, and I'm looking at it from trying to win games. Using running backs in creative ways with multiple skill sets is a good equalizer for what many consider as a thin draft class at receiver and a very thin free agent class at receiver.
Well, we could talk about how if he just played wide receiver, he'd be a worthwhile draft pick in this draft. Bijan's got the ability, if he had to just play. Look, he's Christian McCaffrey. That's the level of player he is. He's Christian McCaffrey. So don't you want Christian McCaffrey on this team? Yeah, I do. You know what was awesome in San Francisco? When Christian McCaffrey would do, 90% of the work on the ground, then they'd go to the hammer that was Elijah Mitchell. Like, how about having a little thunder and lightning? And oh, by the way, you can put them both on the field because CMC can catch the ball. Well, Bijan can catch the ball. I'm already calling him CMC. Bijan catch the ball. So, look, I at the minimum, I'd leave this draft with 2 running backs. At the minimum. And I'd consider adding a bounce back veteran from free agency as well. If you told me today they're getting 2 running backs in the draft and it doesn't matter where they get drafted, I'm happy.
I think the more running backs, the better. Like the Elijah Mitchell example, we talked about it with DeMeco Ryans. Dude, they drafted Trey Sermon in that same draft. They traded half a draft for Christian McCaffrey last year, and they had limited draft equity. Yep. You've got to value the running back position. Where do you sit on the Queen thing? Because that's how we started this. The Patrick Queen. What's the right price for you when it comes to Patrick Queen?
3rd round pick. You got to look at what you're bringing to the table. And he's already a guy that's in a couple of years into his contract, a couple of years into his NFL career. What bad habits can you coach out? What good habits can you instill? I don't believe we're going to see a lot of the same linebackers this year. I could see overhaul in a big way. I love the conversation that Caserio had this week when he talked about getting together with DeMeco Ryans. And it wasn't, hey, this is how we feel about these guys. What do you think? It was, go watch everything. If you have a question, ask me. But then after you have all your opinions, I'll take mine and we'll meld them together. And I got to imagine when DeMeco Ryans watched these linebackers, there wasn't a lot of good linebacker play. There wasn't a lot of linebacker play.
No, there's no way. There's no way. Of all the evaluation going on right now, and we'll save the questions. Subscribe, like, do all that. Subscribe to Stutz's too. The Texans digital game is blowing up. And this is really effing fun. Less than 4 weeks away from free agency and 10 weeks from the draft. Of all the things that happened, there's no chance in hell. If DeMeco Ryans is worth a damn, there's no chance, and I think he is. There's no chance in hell he put in that tape and liked what he saw at the linebacker position. I don't know. I don't know when you start considering even drafting him or, what you're going to do in free agency, but there's no way he put in the tape and said, you know what, Christian Kirksey, that's the guy I want lead my defense. Yeah. There's no chance in hell.
I just don't know where you're going to invest in getting the linebackers. Is that adding some veterans? Is that another high draft pick so that you hope that
you want more cash? You want some more Cashman?
No. No, the only cash I want is when the guy at the sports book says, "Here's your cash, man," which that doesn't happen very often. For me.
That didn't. I've seen you gamble. I'm one to talk.
We don't put a lot of winners out there, that's for sure. Look, you want to get Queen in here, sure, but it's a big 2-year commitment from a money standpoint for a guy that. The Baltimore Ravens all of a sudden don't want this guy. That little red flag there. Don't you?
Do they not want him, or does he not want them, or does he know that he's not going to get a new deal? Did he have a conversation? Because I think he's extension eligible, and say, well, we already got this investment in Roquan. We don't want to do that. Baltimore's cold-blooded. they just put Lamar Jackson out there on the final year of the rookie deal. And I mean, it's not like they're going to invest or negotiate with Patrick Queen. So it could have been something there.
I'd be interested to know if he's got that sort of that under the table, like, hey, you can go talk to teams about maybe trading for you, and then they could talk to us. So it wouldn't surprise me. Look, I think until he proves us otherwise, the thought process is going to be that any linebacker that plays for DeMeco Ryans is going to get better, right? So
that's the hope. That's the hope.
Yeah, again, until he gets on the field and there's a negative regression from a linebacker, we're going to expect that every linebacker is going to play better under DeMeco Ryans. And so I'm intrigued to see what he puts together from what he wants linebacking core. Does he need a veteran, or is he comfortable running a bunch of 1, 2, and 3 year guys out there? So I would expect them to draft one at some point. And if your linebacking room and the first kind of 3 linebackers you run out on the field are Queen, Harris, and a drafted player, that's a pretty good linebacker room.
What are the things that we can look at with the 49ers? And I'm having this conversation with you for the first time. And then this is just kind of because when I get with you, the brain kind of flows a little bit. Every time like a new system comes or someone that comes from a different front office or regime, you automatically think, well, how can we copy that? How can we get a guy that has this role in that organization? What are the most like realistic things that the Texans can duplicate here from San Francisco? And I'm talking like more like, the Fred Warner, you develop a 3rd rounder into an all-pro type of guy. The safety, you develop the safety into an all-pro type of guy.
Funga or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Juszczyk, like Kyle Juszczyk. I keep hearing people say, well, the fullback, that's just a freak. That's just a freak thing that doesn't happen. George Kittle, like what the philosophy on running backs, like is there anything there that you think that maybe they can duplicate, or a philosophy that they're going to take on? Because I have a couple. I want to get your take.
It's not as specific as this or that, or this one player or that one player. To me, it's very much, you look at this 49ers team and damn near every starter was a drafted player. Ayuk, Samuel, Jennings, Mitchell, most of their O-line. Kittle, most of their defense. I mean, almost everybody was a drafted player. And when you have the most draft capital in the NFL for the next 2 years, you got an opportunity to replicate that. Now, look, the Eagles had a lot of drafted players too, but some of those guys have been there 10 years. Ayuk's 3 years old. Samuel's 4 years old in the NFL. Jawan Jennings is 3 years old. Their guards are rookie and second-year player, second-year player and third-year player. So the drafted element to this, having all those picks and creating that long-term talent density, is something that I would think with the extra draft capital you want to achieve and you'd like to achieve. That's what makes one of those meshing of DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio. If you want a bunch of drafted guys, you have to have a lot of draft picks. Well, we know Trader Nick likes to move around a little bit, and he's traded up a bunch in his time with this team. So I'll be interested to see how that kind of meshes from that standpoint. And Landry, I think really toughness. And you got to – and I'm not talking about fake tough. I'm not talking about, a center that's got to retire in the middle of the season tough. I'm talking about legitimate dogs out there, to steal a term from Laramie Tunsil. Like finding those guys and, hey, this guy is 10% worse than the other guy, but he's a mean SOB, and we know we're getting 100% out of him every time. Like, put those guys on this roster. The Texans have been soft for a few years. Remember those Bill O'Brien offensive lines? They got bullied around. Even after they added Laramie, there were times where they got bullied. And the defensive line certainly has been bullied the past couple of years. Go get some guys that are just a lot tougher than what you've seen. I think that those are the two things that kind of jump off the page, is the type of player and the vast majority of that 49ers roster being built through the recent drafts, like last 4 or 5 years worth of drafts. Like the Eagles got guys that are key players and drafted like a decade ago. Like the 49ers are there, and they got guys in the last 4 or 5, 3 drafts that are super key players.
My thing, the philosophy I think they're going to copy, they're going to value running backs. I think that's a given. I really think that's a Caserio thing too. Like New England did too. They drafted Sony Michel in the first round when a lot of people thought that they probably shouldn't. They're going to value running backs. I think we're going to see a lot of guys contributing on Sunday. It's not going to be this guy carries it 20 and then, maybe you come and spell him and you get pissed off when it happens. So I think they're going to value running backs. I think DeMeco is going to develop linebackers. I think that's going to translate. But like the comparison about like you find a Kittle or you find a Juszczyk, that's easier said than done. Although, as Chris brings up in here, he's talking about drafting Mayer at 12. I don't think you have to do that. I think in the second round, third round, day 2, there's going to be some tight ends available to where if they want to trade back into round 2 and they want to give up a couple threes, they're going to be able to get tight ends on day 2. I don't think they have to worry about that in day 1.
I believe they're leaving the first round with 3 first-round picks. I would think they're going to do, especially if somebody they really like starts to fall. So let's say you go QB and defensive lineman at 12. If one of these wide receivers, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Addison, Quentin Johnston, one of these tight ends they really like starts to get into the 20s, the mid-20s, you got the second pick in the second round. That's an easy move up with some of the extra draft capital that you have.
No doubt. Blue Boy talking about the quarterbacks says A. Richardson is going to last longer in the league than Bryce Young. Mark my words. Look at all the small QBs playing right now. Tua can't stop getting concussions, and Kyler Murray may be out till December. Kyler Murray tore his ACL just like Joe Burrow did. I mean, like he didn't get hurt because he's small. He tore his ACL like Joe Burrow did. Tua doesn't know how to fall. Like Tua doesn't know how to fall. Like the comparison between Tua and Bryce Young is weird. Tua broke his hip in college. Bryce Young sat out a couple games out of caution. So yeah, I'll mark your words. I don't think that Anthony Richardson lasts as long in the league as Bryce Young.
I don't care how durable you are if you can't play. Yeah, availability is not the greatest ability when that's your best ability. Like, guys, big quarterbacks get hurt, folks. Big QBs get hurt, just the same as the little guys. The most injured draft prospect at quarterback this year was Will Levis. He played the entire year hurt. That's one of the biggest excuses for his crappy film in 2022. He's hurt. Yeah, big guys get hurt. They get banged up. It's football. Everybody gets hurt.
What did you make of? Go ahead.
It's not like Bryce is going out here like Lamar and turning himself into a battering ram trying to get an extra 4 yards. They're not going to do they're not going to run the Hurts offense with Bryce Young. Like the guy uses that weapon when he has to, not because it's one of his best weapons.
Chris is going back to the tight ends. Usually take tight ends in the mid rounds and they never pan out. But if you look around the league, Travis Kelce was a 3rd round pick. Kittle was, I think, a 4th, or is he a 5th? Kittle was that tight ends like in the top 15. I don't like generalizations of this doesn't work, this doesn't work. It doesn't pan out very often at 15. Just go back and look at tight ends drafted in the top 12. You'll throw up. Gronk was a 2nd round pick. Aaron Hernandez was a 5th round pick. Dallas Goedert was a day 2 or 3 pick. Like the tight ends, day 2, day 3, you can take advantage. Maybe they trade up to the first back into the first round and get the tight end. I do think they're going to take it. They're going to take it serious. But drafting tight ends in the top 12, like it just doesn't happen. Doesn't work out.
It sure felt like almost every one of these playoff teams, and certainly the teams that went deep in the playoffs, it sure felt like all of them had good tight end play. Maybe it was a dynamic pass catcher who's super unique, like Travis Kelce or George Kittle, or it was a grinder that can do a little bit of everything, which is what Austin Hooper is. Hayden Hurst is for the Bengals, or maybe it's that catch first guy like Evan Ingram. It sure feels like you need to have a good tight end in today's NFL to be one of the upper echelon teams and to be successful. And tight end's one of the toughest positions to make the college to pro jump year after year. And, I know that this is the example I'm about to give is fantasy football, but from a production standpoint, rookie tight ends have a very difficult time producing at a high level because it takes time to transition. If you're going to get a tight end, you'd want a young guy that's going to take a year or two, grow with your quarterback, and then turn into a nice, complete player in the next couple of years. I'm ready to make that type of investment if I'm the Texans.
Quitoriano, I think he's going to be nice. I think he's going to be a pleasant surprise, man.
They can't go to the season with him as the starter.
No. I'm saying, but they're going to use multiple tight ends, I'm sure, and I think he's nice.
I do wonder if the offensive approach outside of running back this year is going to be a committee by necessity. Hey, you have a lot of options. Currently, none of them are great at what they do, but you have a lot of options. We're going to play 2 tight ends. We're going to throw the ball to the running backs. We're going to have John Mechie back on the field, hopefully. We're going to have the other wide receivers, hopefully a drafted guy. These guys may not be great right away, but you got to have enough people to try something if you're not going to have a bunch of great players.
Do you think Brevin Jordan can be better in the new offense, or is he on his way out? I think he's on his way out. I don't know how he fits. I think you got to block. We're going to be having the same conversation about Brevin Jordan this training camp that we did last. And the only difference is I think you got to lean towards maybe it just being it for him. I don't know. I don't see him putting it together.
He's a guy that I would have body questions about coming in. Just what does he look like? Does he look like the same guy? Because that guy couldn't block. Did he bulk up a little bit? Okay, if he did.
He bulked up last year.
Is he slower? Does that affect his ability to catch the ball and run with it? And look, it's a 5th-round investment. If Brevin Jordan doesn't work out,
not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. It's not like you're cutting a guy who you spent a 1st-round pick on.
T1908, General Mills will shock the world next season.
Was he talking about next XFL season? Ben DiNucci's playing in the XFL. Ben DiNucci.
Wasn't he in Hard Knocks with the Cowboys?
Yeah, he was. He actually runs a really successful clothing line out of Dallas too.
Is it the upside down Dallas hat or something?
Yeah, that's his stuff.
It's one of the goofiest things ever. What the hell is that?
I don't love it, but the trendy kids seem to like it.
What did you make of the Steichen hire with Indy? They looked into something, didn't they?
Well, watching that press conference from Steichen and just kind of hearing some of the stuff that he talks about, you could see where if his football stuff came off this level and DeMeco Ryans' football stuff came off this level, you could see why DeMeco, flew past him. Steichen's dry behind the mic. If he was a professional wrestler, he'd damn sure have a manager talking for him. But that guy knows ball, man. That guy knows ball. You read the Phillip Rivers story about how when he took over as the offense coordinator in the middle of the year, how they were running stuff that the other coaches hadn't even noticed. And Phillip Rivers raved about him. He called plays for Herbert, and he's called plays these past couple. The guy's clearly a high-level football mind, and if they give him a team, they should be right there with. I know the Colts are 4, the Texans are 2. Those 2 teams have the opportunity in front of them to be the class of the AFC South. I understand Jacksonville exists and just made the playoffs, but if they get a little bit of luck in Indianapolis, that thing's not going to be super hard to turn around.
How did this happen right here? What's going on the bottom of the screen?
What?
Look at this. What? How did this happen? Did Cody leave his email up or something?
Hey, Cody tweeted out the link to get people to watch this.
Good one,
And
Cody.
He tweeted out the backstage link, so I just joined. I didn't think you'd actually put me on.
Get him out of here. Good God.
Oh, no.
Good
My
job,
bad.
Weasel. Good job, Weasel.
I copied the dang man. Technology's I don't know. I feel like I make too much fun of our parents when they ask for help because I just bad job
Yeah.
on me.
Yeah, bad job by you. People could have come backstage, done it.
Oh damn, man! You gotta let them on if they come backstage.
Goodness gracious. Who do you think Indianapolis likes at quarterback?
Levis.
I think they like Bryce. I think Kevin Bowen, who joins our show, thinks that Irsay was actually saying what he actually meant. He doesn't think it was a smokescreen. He doesn't think it was an accident. He thinks that Jim Irsay really thinks that. Chris Ballard might not think that. And that was Irsay's way of putting it out there.
Look, there's everybody's going to tell you the owner gets what the owner wants. And Irsay is no different. And if you're Chris Ballard and you want to keep your job, yeah, I know Chris Ballard can get a job somewhere else, but I can imagine he wants to keep his job. Apparently he just built a brand new spanking house in Indianapolis. Like, you want to keep your job, you're comfortable, you believe in yourself. If you piss off Irsay and it doesn't look good with what you do, you're getting fired. He's not firing Steichen. He fires Ballard, and then there's a new GM in there. So what the owner wants, the owner's going to get. That was 3 days ago? So we've got, they've got 73 days to convince Jim Irsay that's not the way the organization should go. But if Jim Irsay wakes up that morning, fires down whatever pills he takes in the morning and says, I want Bryce Young, they're taking Bryce Young.
Are they? I mean, at some point, like, when is Chris Ballard going to defend himself? Like, he fired your coach, he benched your quarterback, all that. Like, what do you do? You just want to sit there and be a stooge for him?
My thing with them is they're taking a quarterback. They're just not going to get, you would think, they're not going to get one of the top two guys unless they trade up. Now, the Bears stick and pick, then they're going to get a shot at whatever the Texans don't take. I believe they're going to like Levis, though. I believe they're going to like Levis, and they're going to want the moldable highest ceiling that they feel like they can find, even though the guy can't play right away. Because you have to imagine, unless Chris Ballard knew that he could be safe by playing a rookie, or if Chris Ballard knew he could be safe by the rookie draft pick at quarterback, then he may be inclined to try to maximize the long-term potential to give them the best option. And Levis is going to have a pretty clean sheet, man. It's, Todd McShay's talked about this 100 times. You're not going to have anybody associated with Levis's high school or Kentucky or opponents say a bad thing about off the field. It's just how do Ballard and
no one's going to say anything bad about any of these guys off the field, I don't think.
Well, but the way McShay was talking about, like, you remember that the list at LSU where they went into LSU and the strength and conditioning coach had a list of guys who were lazy? Like, the coaches will tell you if you go visit. Like, if Levis was a turd who didn't go to workouts and the team didn't like him, then you would know after talking to the coach. But he's going to come back with a sterling off the field thing.
I think he stinks.
He's Kentucky Carson Wentz.
I think that's an insult to Carson Wentz. I think he flat out stinks.
But he's not the good Carson Wentz. We will replace what in the Carson Wentz is that with what in the Will Levis is that. We will replace that as a saying in the NFL when Will Levis gets in here. Like, I will bet against him every week. I do not believe in that guy. I do not believe it. When one game doesn't make or break a guy, but my God, when you face one of the worst secondaries from a statistical standpoint in the entire nation, and you can't throw for 100 yards, that's a joke. That's a joke.
Any chance the Texans can trade up for the third pick and put pressure on the Bears? If they trade one to the Colts, Texans might take Will Anderson and Jalen Carter 2 and 3. Either way, Texans win. That's a lot. That's too much. I don't know how that would pressure the Bears at all. They're saying,
what do you always say to Figgy? Hit it, Figgy.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Hit it, Figgy. EA Sports. It's in the game.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
Yeah. Look, trading up from 12 would be foolish, in my opinion, unless Because what are you really trading up for?
I think the best philosophy I saw from Miller, and this I kind of saw the light because I was talking about how if the Texans wanted to max assets and trade back, they could really get the same thing that the Bears are going to get for one if they wanted to max, because it's really just about how many picks you go up and the fact that it's a franchise quarterback. But Matt Miller brought up, and I can't believe I didn't think of this, and I'm sure some people in the chats have said this. By the way, subscribe, like Locker Room, Texans Daily Digital Content. Subscribe to Cody's channel as well. The Bears really don't lose anything by trading with the Texans, assuming that teams like different quarterbacks. Like if the Colts are wanting to trade up and they're wanting to get Bryce Young or Will Levis or someone else, and the Texans are wanting to trade up and get Bryce Young, then you take 2 3s and a 4 from the Texans and you trade back to 2, and you can still trade and get the exact, pretty much the same thing that you would have gotten at 1. So why would they not do that just for some icing?
I'll be very surprised if they add a future first via trade down. I really will. I could see them adding more second day picks in this upcoming draft, but I would be really surprised in a trade down that they were able to add a future first. Now, what
if it's Carolina or Atlanta?
But see, that was the caveat I was getting ready to add. That's talking about going from 1 to 2 or 1 to 4.
My point is though, if they're willing to trade with those, like if the Bears are just going to say, and this is the dream scenario for the Texans, if the Bears are saying, all right, we can live without Carter or Anderson, we like Tyree Wilson and we like some of these other guys, and we can just cross our fingers and hope that we find someone there. If they're willing to do that, then you have to make the trade with the Texans first. You get a couple 3s and 4, you make that trade, and then you can trade back, and it's not going to be that much different at all.
No.
Assuming they don't want Young.
What would you do if you were Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus?
I would trade with the Texans, and then I would take Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, and not because I would probably fall in love with one of those guys, and I would not even want to risk that they're going to be gone at 3 or 4, because I just don't see them. I don't see them saying that there's no drop off from these guys. We do it because we're just, we don't have a rooting interest. Our ass isn't on the line. We're not 3-tech coaches like Matt Eberflus that like either, one of these guys better. So it's easy for us to say, well, you just take the defensive guy that's there at 4, whichever one the team selected number 3 doesn't take. I don't think that they would want to risk that. So I take the 2 3s and the 4 from the Texans, and then I get my guy Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, and I get back pretty much what I gave up for Claypool and call it a day. But if I'm trying to max assets, then I think you trade with the Texans too, and then you trade with Atlanta or Carolina or something like that.
I'm super interested to see what the Bears do in free agency. They're gonna have to spend a lot of money. They have a cash floor that they have to hit, so they got to spend a lot of money. And they had some successful players last year that were mid to late round picks. So they may think to themselves, well, we had a little success. Let's get a few more of those, 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks, and give ourselves some more swings. I saw this though. I think it was in Matt Miller's article. One talent evaluator thought the Bears could upgrade 20 of 22 starting positions in the draft and free agency. And I was like, holy crap. 20 of 22 starting positions that you could feasibly upgrade from free agency in the draft. I was like, I guess I didn't realize they were that bad. They're bad, but I guess I didn't realize they were that bad. And so having a lot of swings, even if they're not big swings, having a lot of opportunities, even if they're not first round picks, it may be useful and worthwhile. They look so stupid for that Claypool thing. They would be less desperate, and there'd be less of a conversation if they just given up the Ravens pick instead of their own pick. What a dumb move.
They give up a top 32. Give up a top 32
terrible.
for Chase Claypool. Really wild. Stutes, appreciate you. We got 10 weeks, man. 10 weeks from Yeah, 10 weeks from right now, we will be talking about what the Texans did
What-
on day one of the draft. I cannot freaking wait.
Well, okay, it's 70 days from now. It's 10 weeks. At 10:05, we'll still be in the first round. We'll probably be in the 20s. Will there be a player that we are advocating for Caserio to trade up to get?
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if
It'll
it's
be
one of the wide-
it'll be Gibbs if they don't take Robinson. It'll be Gibbs or it'll be one. It could be a receiver or a tight end. Like if
I
a
think
tight
it's-
end hasn't gone, like if you get your pick of the top tight end at like 24, you can trade up and get him. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like the first round is going to be so much fun because basically the Texans kick it off because you'll know what number one is based on the team roughly.
Tyler asked if I'm going live for the draft. Come on, man. Of course. Probably after, but I'll be out there. Attend the party if you can. Attend the party. It's fun out there. And of course, I'm going to be live for the draft. I'll be live before, after, during, all that type of stuff. We'll have a post-game show. Might not even sleep on draft day. So yes, of course.
I'm just trying to figure out who in the back part of the first round is willing to give up that first rounder because they need some more assets.
On the back,
New Orleans at 30. If you left with Young, a defensive lineman, and
you got to get a receiver.
the Notre Dame tight end, would you be okay with that first round?
I guess, but I mean, you got to get a receiver.
Zay Flowers is my favorite receiver right now.
Really?
Boston College.
Okay.
Steve Smith did a big breakdown on him and just raved about him. Casario's going to like him because Flowers got offered like $2 million to transfer from Boston College to a bigger school, and he turned it down. He stayed at Boston College. And he's 5'11", but he's Mr. Go up and get it. So he's my
Steve Smith likes every receiver under 6 foot. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I like Zay, and I think Njigba's going in the top 14.
He's getting disrespected, man.
People keep saying he's going to be slow at the combine, like those Ohio State guys didn't set the world on fire when they went a couple of years ago.
They did, and they also said that he was the
better.
best athlete. That's what they said.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he played in the slot. Like, dude, this
That's
guy can
fine.
play anywhere.
It's fine.
This guy can play anywhere.
He had some drops, whatever. All right, brother. I'll talk to you later. Probably soon. Do your thing.
Anytime.
Cody Stutes on YouTube. Subscribe. Digital game blowing up. This is the top spot, though. Subscribe, like, get the algorithms up, comment, cuss me out. Do whatever you got to do. Try not to cuss. I think they kind of frown upon that. Say whatever you got to say. At Landry Locker on Twitter, at Landry Locker on Instagram. In the Loop, show of record in town, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610. Appreciate you for coming through. 10 weeks away from the draft, less than 4 weeks away from free agency. Stuff is getting fun. Trade for Queen if you can. Let's get crazy. Let's just have some fun. Congrats, Clint Kubiak, too, by the way. No matter what happens, just remember, I appreciate y'all, and we are all in this together. Have a good one.